Hey, what up, YouTube? I am so excited for this video. We are coming into a new video with my predictions, my weekly predictions, and we are doing the first round prop of the FA Cup. We've also got some league games, which I think is a bit less interesting. Some EFL Trophy ones and some Champions League ones, but plenty to look forward to. It's all starting tonight with Wrexham hosting Coventry. Every week I am more and more impressed by this Coventry side. They are on a winning streak. It looks like absolutely no one can stop Frank Lampard's men from dominating this championship, unbeaten in 12, scored 34, conceded 9, positive 25 goal difference. Absolutely ridiculous. I would be naive to say anything other than a Coventry win here. 2-1 to Coventry. Let's get our first FA Cup game underway, shall we? With Luton Town versus Forest Green Rovers. Luton in the first round of this competition. They haven't been in the first round for quite a while now. They have slowly gone back down to entering in this round due to being in League One, and they're at home to Forest Green Rovers, who have also been on a bit of a decline in recent years and now find themselves in the National League, having recently been in League One as well. So both of these two teams are on the decline and hoping that this season they can make a change and get promoted. I think Luton in this one will win. I think they'll avoid the upset at Kenilworth Road. 3-1 to Luton Town. Some Premier League ones. We've got Brighton and Hove Albion versus Leeds United. Now, Leeds are a team which currently looking just about good enough to stay up this season. I think that's fair to say. Actually, as we currently speak, all three of the promoted sides are currently outside of relegation zone. But I do think that Brighton are better in every department so far. Defensively, probably slightly more shaky, but they know how to get a result. And I'm going to go, as a result, a 1-0 Brighton win. Burnley are hosting Arsenal. Now, yes, they have had back-to-back wins, Burnley, but this is the team which is at top of the league at the moment. They are unbeaten in a long streak now. And is this going to be Arsenal's season? It is beginning to look like it. Liverpool doing very poorly. Manchester City miles off. You wouldn't suspect that Bournemouth or Tottenham or Sunderland would be able to compete for a title race. So maybe this is Arteta's time to get a Premier League title. I think it'll be a comprehensive Arsenal 5-0 demolition job here at Turf Moor. Crystal Palace versus Brentford. Crystal Palace in the league has been a bit 50-50 in the EFL Cup. They were perfect, though, in midweek. Whereas in the league, Brentford have won 2 games on the bounce. They are certainly a side that I think could win this one. I'm going to back Brentford for a 2-1 win in this London derby. I mean, it could go the other way. Very feasible. They are about equal. Brentford slightly more better in the offence. Crystal Palace slightly more better in the defence. Not much difference between these two teams. Fulham versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves, let's face it, they're struggling, but so are Fulham as we speak, which may provide Wolves with a bit of a silver lining of hope for this game. You would suspect that they are suspect that they'd probably be going for this in full power, to be honest. Both of these on a really bad losing streak, essentially, or a winless run. 4 losses in a row for Fulham. Wolves haven't won a game in their opening 9 fixtures. Both are looking increasingly out their depth, quite frankly, and struggling. I'd say if Marco Silva loses this, despite the goodness he has done with Fulham in the past, you would have to suspect he would merit the sack, because that would definitely drag them, I think, into a relegation battle. Something that they desperately would not want to get involved with. I'm going to go with a 4-1 Wolverhampton Wanderers win and a dismissal for Marco Silva. Nottingham Forest are hosting Man United. Third time a charm, Forest, eh? You literal idiots. They brought in Ange, and now we got rid of Ange just as quickly. I would have just loved to see him carry on going, to be honest. He was doing such a great job with Forest. What was everyone complaining about? We'll ignore the fact that they're 18th and looking absolutely rubbish so far. To be fair, Sean Dyche, we know, is one of them managers who will probably be able to keep them up. Not sure if that was the expectations come the start of the season, but they're up against a Man United side. Yes, they've won 3 in a row. Very inconsistent, though. It could be a 1-0 Forest here. It wouldn't surprise me with Sean Dyche at the helm whether they go to the more skullduggery and dark arts of football. Tottenham Hotspur versus Chelsea. Seeing Chelsea in 9th and Tottenham in 3rd is a surreal sight over the last few seasons. Surprising to especially see Chelsea so far down that table. I think this will be a competitive game, an end-to-end and exciting game. I'm going to go a 4-3 win to Chelsea. Liverpool are hosting Aston Villa, and I do think if Liverpool win this, Arne Slot does deserve to be sacked. I know he won the league title last season, but sometimes being ruthless is what's needed. He's been knocked out at EFL Cup 3-0 to Palace, lost 1-0 to Galatasaray a few weeks ago in the Champions League, has lost 4 league games on the bounce. It isn't looking good. I'm going to be real with you. And Aston Villa are 4 wins in a row. Currently, the favour is certainly pointing towards Aston Villa to win this. I am going to say, though, at Anfield, Liverpool to win this one by 2-0. Maybe just enough to save Slot for now. Leicester City versus Blackburn Rovers onto the Championship. Leicester probably underperforming. Marta Cifuentes is struggling to get his side really at that top end of the promotion challenging, which is roughly where you would expect them to be. They've still got a decent side. Yes, they've lost a few of their good players, so to speak, but it's one of them ones that it just isn't clicking right now. Blackburn finally got a win in their last game. Will that prove enough to go into this one? I don't know. They are certainly embroiled in a relegation battle, it's fair to say. And I think quite likely to be relegated on the current balance play. I think Sheffield United, despite their poor start to the season, are going to be a side that will probably be able to get dragged themselves out of it. Same probably with Norwich City. So yeah, I think Blackburn are almost certainly doomed. My mouse has stopped working. Why does this happen? We are back live. Right. Sorry about that. That was mouse fault on my end. My mouse is slightly technically glitchy. But yes, in the game, which is between Blackburn and Leicester, you know what? We'll go with a cheeky Blackburn win. I don't think Leicester are doing well at the moment. We've lost the last 2 games. Blackburn seems to have turned a corner. 2-0 to Blackburn. Why ever not? Norwich City versus Hull City. How on earth Norwich City have not sacked Gerard Struber is not Gerrard Stuber, sorry, Liam Manning is beyond me. Liam Manning was at Bristol City, and now Gerrard Stuber is at Bristol City, hence that confusion. But yes, he certainly has proven himself to be a bit of a one-trick pony. Lost the last 5 games in a row. He's looking quite poor. That Norwich squad should not be in a relegation zone. And you know what? I think when things get tight, maybe he can pull out a result and beat an unbeaten Hull City in 5 games. We're going to go with a wacky 4-0 Norwich City. You know what? It's the Championship. Anything can indeed happen. It is one of them ones, though, that I'm probably almost inevitably going to be getting it wrong. But sometimes we like to spice up things a bit. West Bromwich Albion versus Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday are in a really sticky and horrible situation to be in. They've lost 4 in a row. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Henrik Pedersen walking away at this point, or having to, or being made redundant. It's not an ideal situation to be in, but I think if you want to reduce costs, removing a manager, he's probably on a decent salary. It's going to be one of them ones, isn't it? You'd hope that they wouldn't, but again, his record isn't actually the greatest, so you never know, but that's not on him. It really isn't. I think West Brom 1 to West Bromwich Albion. Yeah, I'm just slightly concerned for Henrik Pedersen, whether he's going to realistically stay through the club now that they're in administration. Birmingham City versus Portsmouth. Yeah, Portsmouth, about where you would expect them to be in the table, in that sort of 18th space. 18th, 17th is sort of where I would expect them to be, even come the end of the season. Birmingham, I think, may drop down slightly. They've proven quite inconsistent at times, but brilliant at other times. I think St Andrews could provide home advantage, really, and I think for that reason, I'm going to edge out Birmingham to win this one by 1-0. But, it's one of them ones. Both of these teams are probably most likely to finish mid-table, lower mid-table, in a relegation scrap, maybe, come the end of the season. So much for that great Birmingham invested squad. It's not really living up to the hype. Charlton Athletic versus Swansea City. How Charlton are in the playoffs is beyond me. This is the wackiness of the Championship. In fact, most of the top 8 I would not have suspected to even been up there in the order they're currently in. So it really is a bizarre one. Swansea are in mid-table, which is they're probably in and around the position that they're going to inevitably be in. Come the and maybe a few positions higher at 12th, 11th. But I don't think it'll be a huge playoff charge, but I do think they might win this one. We'll go 2-1 to Swansea City, which then actually makes it look much more realistic that they'd be in a playoff position. So far, Charlton have got 19 points. Going down to Birmingham in 15th on 15 points. It's wide open. 4 gaps for points for Derby, actually, are only 5 points behind. Together. We are pushing ourselves up the league a bit. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to. Oxford United versus Millwall. Millwall have won the last 4 games in a row. They're doing a great job. Absolute plaudits must be given to Millwall this season. Their squad has been fantastic. Alex Neil has been equally fantastic. Not really too much of a surprise. Maybe. I mean, I'm not too sure. He's one of them ones that he did a really good job at Sunderland. Was a bit mid, at Preston. He wasn't great necessarily with Norwich, and Stoke underperformed. He's an odd one because I think actually at Millwall he's probably doing the best he's done since he was at Hamilton Academical, where he managed to get them promoted. Was it promoted? It was, or enabled them to. He did well with them. He won the Scottish Premiership playoffs in 2014. But it was, I think he's clearly found a team and a system which works with him at Millwall. So all credit going to him. Gary Rowett, who I believe used to be a Millwall manager at one point, is now in charge of Oxford United. Yes, it was 2019 to 2023. He was Millwall manager for quite a while, it turns out. I knew he was. Never in doubt. I think, sometimes old managers will want to rekindle a bit of a rivalry with their old club. We'll go with a 1-1 draw in this one. A fairly even game by all standards. Queen's Park Rangers versus Ipswich Town. 9th versus 12th. Both of these teams are wildly inconsistent. I'm going to Ipswich to win this one by 1-0, but it could be vice versa. Really could. Sheffield United versus Derby County. I'm slightly worried that Sheffield United are going to start gathering together a bit of a run. They did lose the last game, but before that, they won 2 games on bounce. Now, yes, we have won 2 games on bounce. I wasn't convinced by either of the performances. We only won 1-0 in both of them. It's not quite a turnaround. Yes, it's breeding a bit more positivity into the club, but I realistically think we're travelling to Bramall Lane. I think we're going to lose only by 1-0, but it'll be disappointing nevertheless. Southampton versus Preston North End. You see, in the normal run of the mill, Southampton would be absolutely trouncing this game, but Preston are knocking on the door of the playoffs. Southampton are involved in a relegation scrap. It's a really wacky championship season so far. If you don't follow championship football, give it a watch. It's really fascinating to see just how wacky the results are week by week. For example, I'm going to go with a 3-0 win to Southampton here because I just can't see Preston beating Southampton. But then again, the league table doesn't lie. Southampton have only picked up 2 wins this season. Preston have picked up 5. Stoke City versus Bristol City. 2 quite decent teams. I like talking about decent teams. I'm always fond of talking about positivity on this channel. And it's 4th v 5th. Both of these 2 teams are looking comfortable playoff challengers this season. Bristol City may even be in a not a title challenge, maybe that's a bit too much, but automatic promotion hunt, maybe, considering how well they did last season, and they are going from strength to strength, it seems. 3 wins in a row. I'm going to have to say, though, I can't call this game here. I'm going with a 2-2 draw at the Bet365. Watford versus Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have only lost once all season, and that is something that it will be absolutely mad what I'm going to say, but I think they might get their second loss here. They did drop points in the last game against Wrexham, I believe it was, and I think Watford are going to win this one 2-1. I think Middlesbrough are more likely to fade away at the moment than Coventry are, purely on they're decent. Yes, they're very decent. However, they are also a side that we saw in their last game has weaknesses, and if Watford can press in on that, maybe things will change. Okay, let's do some FA Cup games. Let's be honest, this is the real reason why we're here. We love this competition. This is my favourite competition in the world, the oldest football competition in the world as well. Absolutely love it. I go to preliminary rounds, extra preliminary rounds. I'll go from the beginning. I'm trying to get to a lot of qualifying rounds as possible. At this point, I could on Sunday theoretically go to South Shields versus Shrewsbury, but I'm also making my way down to Stockton tomorrow to see Stockton versus Ilkeston, and I don't overly want to do 2 non-league games in a weekend, and I've already booked train ticket. So I'm going to do a live watch-along probably on the Sunday of Walsall versus Eastleigh instead. I think that might be better because I've been to South Shields before. I'll probably end up going at some point before the end of the season again. But yeah, North Essex Derby is the first one to kick us off on the Saturday ones, as Chelmsford City are hosting Braintree Town. Chelmsford having a disappointing season. If you're a regular to this channel, then you would know the decline of Chelmsford so far this season. Braintree are in the relegation zone of the National League. Not too much of a surprise there. In actual fact, these two teams at one point were going to merge. I think I might do a separate video on that at some point, but that is an absolutely fascinating one, and I don't think many people know about it. So it may be worth covering a 10-15 minute video at some point in the next couple of weeks. Braintree, I think, might edge this one out. 3-2 to Braintree Town. You know, it's not something I would be confident saying that there won't be an upset overall, because they're very feasibly it can be. To be fair, if Braintree win this one, they joint their best ever FA Cup performance. That's an added bonus incentive, if you will. Yeah, we'll back the National League side. AFC Wimbledon versus Gateshead. It's at Plough Lane. Another long trip for Gateshead. They get a lot of them in the National League. I think it'll be a very close game, this one. I think Gateshead will try and make it tricky, but I think the League One quality might just shine. 1-0 to AFC Wimbledon in this one. They're doing well in the league as well at the moment. Gateshead aren't. Yeah, I can't quite see an upset. A bit of a Yorkshire derby affair, I don't know. Barnsley are hosting York City at Oakwell. Again, I can't quite see an upset on the cards on this one. I'm going 2-1 to Barnsley. I love an upset, but I can't see it with some of these. Blackpool versus Scunthorpe United. Now, this is definitely one I can see an upset on. Blackpool are currently, I think they're second from bottom in League One. They are they're just in the dark. They're not entirely sure what to do. They've appointed Ian Evatt, decent enough manager. He'll be probably, at the moment, most wanting to get his team out of a relegation zone. Because that's where the priority now lies. Andy Butler's Scunthorpe, I think, will be smelling blood. They're currently doing really well in the National League. You know what? We'll back Scunthorpe to win by 3-1. That's your upset. Bolton Wanderers versus Huddersfield Town. These two fallen giants are constantly at each other's throats, it seems, and are vying for the playoffs. I am sure of it. I think Bolton at home might provide a win here. 3-1 to Bolton Wanderers. It is a bit of an old-fashioned Lancashire versus Yorkshire as well, War of the Roses type thing. Yeah, I can see Bolton winning this one. Boreham Wood versus Crawley Town. We know Boreham Wood love this competition. They have had a couple of recent good cup runs involving fixtures against Millwall and Ipswich, the like. And they're hosting Crawley. They'll probably see this as a bright opportunity, especially seeing how well Boreham Wood have done in the league so far in the playoffs. Crawley struggling down near the bottom of the relegation scrap. I might go with a 0-0 draw. And I think Crawley Town either win in extra time or on penalties. I don't like the fact that they've removed the replays. I will say that now. put the replays back into the FA Cup at this stage. There was no reason to take it out. The Premier League aren't in there. They can't complain. It is absolutely ridiculous. Just saw a message from Hi Ho Sheffield Wednesday. Good evening to you. Yes, the Championship is definitely more competitive than Premier League these days, in my opinion. Yes and no. It was for years. I thought it seemed like it. Recently, some of the results which you've seen from the likes of Bournemouth or Aston Villa or Crystal Palace and Brighton, it's made it much more interesting, in my opinion. Yes, the relegation battle was a bit more boring than the Championship ones, but I think towards the top end, competing for Europe, we have seen some quite interesting ones. However, the PL now does seem to be getting an arguably more interesting competitive again, like how none of the three newly promoted clubs are currently in relegation zone. Exactly. And I'm loving to see Forest in relegation zone. Chelmsford City versus Braintree Essex Derby. Yes, it is. I have just gone over that. We will go over to Bromley versus Bristol Rovers. Oh, an interesting one. I remember seeing Bromley in the FA Cup on TV last year. They seem quite impressive at times. Bristol Rovers, also quite a decent team. Maybe they'll be wanting it a run just to hope that they can draw against Bristol City, because I think that's the only time that they're really likely to face each other. They have Darryl Clark as a manager of Bristol Rovers, who seem to be around the block as a while at this point. But yeah, I think we're going to back Bristol Rovers in this one. 1-0 to Bristol Rovers. Burton Albion versus St Albans City. Ian Culverhouse has just left St Albans to go to Kings Lynn Town. I think this is a perfect, ideal time to talk about this, actually. It was either going to be this one or Kings Lynn's game. It's a bit of a disappointment for St Albans. Got a big game up against the League One side in Burton Albion, maybe Isthmian League, so it's a huge gap between the two. So it is disappointing that Ian Culverhouse has chosen to leave at this point, as opposed to waiting till after this game. But it is what it is. Kings Lynn, I think it's a wise appointment, maybe. I don't know. Ian Culverhouse did get St Albans relegated. It's one of them ones that, but he also did a decent job over a longer period of time. Well, in this one, we're going to exclusively look at this game as it is, and I think St Albans might get stuck in. Certainly, I'm going to go with a 1-0 Burton Albion. I don't want an upset because Burton Albion I sort of have a soft spot for. I think all Derby fans do. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want them to thump, and I like an upset as well, so it's a difficult one. This is one I think Buxton versus Chatham Town. Either of these going through would be great for football. Chatham Town are in Tier 8, I believe. Buxton in the National League North. Either of these two teams go through. They're probably likely to be on TV in the next round, let's be honest. I think we're going to see a 0-0 draw in this one. Neither of the teams particularly wanting to get out. I think we'll go for extra time. I think on penalties, Buxton will edge it. We'll edge the Derbyshire one, lads. I'd love like a Buxton travelling to Gateshead or something. It would be very, very interesting for me because I'll go and see that one. Cambridge United versus Chester. I think Chester's going to cause an upset. I really do. I think the National League North side is going to come up, make things difficult. I'm going to go 1-0 to Chester. And Cambridge succumb to an upset. Cheltenham Town versus Bradford City. Both of these two teams have tasted League One football, either recently with Bradford City or I think it was last season, maybe the season before with Cheltenham. I think we're going to see an even game, a 1-1 draw in this one with Bradford City to win in extra time or on penalties, because they are doing immense currently in the League One. I think they're even in the automatic zones at the moment in second place. So yeah, certainly doing well. Colchester United versus MK Dons. The Essex side, I think, will probably be more of this. I think Milton Keynes Dons, they're probably more focuses on promotion at the moment. And we all know we can't back a franchise to win it. 2-1 to Colchester United. Crewe Alexandra versus Doncaster Rovers. I think these two were in a playoff semi-final. Not last season, the season before. Maybe last season. Both of them have definitely had a history in the lower leagues overlapping each other. I think a 1-1 draw and Doncaster Rovers to win in extra time or on penalties. I think they do need to edge through on this because they're struggling a bit now in League One. And the FA Cup can provide a bit of a boost. Fleetwood Town versus Barnet at Highbury. Difficult place to go, very windy, and I imagine it will be windy considering the storms we've had of late. 2-1 to Fleetwood Town, to the Cod Army, and yeah, I think their home ground can become really useful coming into these winter months. Grimsby Town versus Ebbsfleet United, two teams known for their relations to ships and boats. As Grimsby fishermen traditionally, Ebbsfleet a port town traditionally in Kent, not in Kent, Essex rather, on the I can never remember which time of the Thames. Somewhere on the Thames. Yeah, I think Grimsby have already shown this season how seriously they take the cup. So they did really well in the EFL Cup, and I think they'll want to be doing well in the FA Cup as well. 3-1 to Grimsby Town. FC Halifax Town versus Exeter City. The Shaman will be looking for an upset at the Shay. They reached the FA. They won the FA Trophy, I believe, in like 2000 and something. They have history of success in 2015-16 and 2022-23. They won the FA Trophy, so they have success at sort of playing in the FA-based competitions. It is going to be difficult up against the next side, which I think will take this quite seriously. I think Exeter will win this one 3-0 to the Grecians. Macclesfield versus AFC Toten. Both of these two teams looking like playoff hopefuls in the respective leagues, in the National League North and in the National League South. It's quite even. I can't quite pick a winner. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. Maybe edge AFC Toten to win on a penalty shootout on this one. But yeah, both of these two teams are climbing rapidly, as it seems at the moment. Macclesfield maybe expected. Wasn't so much expecting it from Totten. Mansfield Town versus Harrogate Town. I think Harrogate will cause an upset in this one. What's their... I mean, Nigel Clough, I don't think, has ever really focused on the FA Cup. I can't remember a time that he did. I think Harrogate have had a couple of decent runs in the past. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Harrogate Town. Newport County versus Gillingham. Gillingham's got a bit of a feel-good feeling around it. Newport County have a bit of a feel-bad feeling around it. That sounds incredibly cringe. But yeah, I think Gillingham will win this one by 3-1 at Rodney Parade. I just think Newport are in a bit of a downward spiral at the moment, and I don't think the FA Cup will do them any help in this rut that they're in. Oldham Athletic versus Northampton Town. Both of these two teams mid-table, so we'll probably be more aiming towards having a decent cup run. So it may make quite a competitive game. I think we'll back Northampton for this one. 2-0 to Northampton. They are in a league above after all. Peterborough United versus Cardiff City. Cardiff will just want to win every game at this point in time. They are flying in League One, or certainly doing very well in League One. That can at least be said. They're in third place. They've had a bit of a couple of difficulties recently, but they are up against a Peterborough side which have had their fair shares of difficulties, being in the bottom of the league. All three of their wins coming in the last 6 games maybe might have turned something around. They have actually recently dismissed their beloved Ferguson and replaced him with Luke Williams, the former Swansea City and Notts County man. I think that's a decent appointment. I thought he was very good at Notts County, especially getting that promotion from the National League and then doing incredibly well in League Two. He was all right at Swansea. I don't think he was... He was sort of one of them ones that was a bit mid. He's a very possession and attacking based style of play manager. You know, he often dominates possession statistics wise. So it might prove an instantaneous result, maybe 2-2 with Peterborough United to win in extra time or on penalties. And, you know, great start under his belt for the new man. Reading versus Carlisle United. Bit of a gulf emerging now as Carlisle saw themselves slip into the National League last season after they had a back-to-back relegation. Was it back-to-back? Really, certainly. They're certainly in League One not that long ago, and they're now in the National League, albeit doing quite well. Reading are very mid-table. They also made I think, a bit more of a harsher decision, sacking Noel Hunt on the same day, I believe it was, when Peterborough sacked theirs. And they have appointed Liam Richardson, who you may remember from Rotherham, but I think more importantly, his time at Wigan. With Rotherham, okay, so be it. He was not great. But, you know, in terms of at Wigan, he managed to take the side. He kept them up in League One, which was his main job when they were into administration. And then the next season, he got them promoted to as League One champions. So he's certainly somebody who I think can do something with Reading. I don't know where their expectations are this season at the moment, but I certainly think he can turn it around, and I think he's going to dominate this game. 5-1 to Reading. It was a good managerial change, I think. Rotherham United versus Swindon Town. Swindon are doing incredibly, and Rotherham are not. I think we could see an absolute surprise upset and demolition job. Okay, yes, Rotherham have gone unbeaten in the last 4 and won the last 3 games in the bounce, but Swindon have been great this season. 4-0 to Swindon Town. Considering how good they have been this season, I can't sing higher praises for them. Salford City versus Lincoln City. Lincoln are in the playoffs of League One. Can you believe it, really? In fact, League One is almost as crazy as the Championship. Stockport in first, Bradford in second, Stevenage in fourth, Lincoln in fifth, AFC Wimbledon in sixth. Which one of these 5 teams I've just mentioned did you expect to be in those positions? Maybe Stevenage, but which ones did you genuinely actually suspect for the this one? Like for these 2 teams, they're up against the Salford City side, which, you know, you expect them to be in the playoffs, and they're not quite there, I don't think. They're not the full finish article at the moment. So I'm going to go 2-0 to Lincoln City. I have just seen your comment, hi ho, Sheffield Wednesday. It was a West Brom win 2-1. But yeah, on to the next one. Slough Town versus Altrincham. The Phil Parkinson reign at Altrincham has unfortunately come to an end. He will ever go down as an absolute legend of the club, having got them an EFL, not an EFL trophy, an FA trophy, I believe it was. But he got them to compete to top end for the playoffs. Put Altrincham maybe back on the map. They have had a bit of giant killings in the past. I think maybe the most notable one came in 1985-86, when in the third round they defeated Birmingham City 2-1. So that was certainly a decent time. They reached actually the third round of the FA Cup in 4 consecutive seasons between 1978-79 and 1981-82. And there were 17 victories against league sides. Unfortunately, they're not against the league side. Or maybe fortunately, whichever way you look at it. They're up against National League South side Slough Town. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think Slough will win this one. I think Altrincham gained the honours here only by a solitary goal to nil. Spennymoor Town versus Barrow. Spennymoor did really well in the FA Trophy last season. They reached the final, so it would be naive for me to say that they won't be competitive in the FA Cup. I just can't see it though. I'm just gonna have to edge out Barrow. 3-0 to the Cumbrian outfit. Stevenage are hosting Chesterfield. Stevenage doing really well as of Chesterfield, but Chesterfield we know have an inconsistent, massive defeat in them. And I think Stevenage, doing so well in the league above, might exploit that. 5-1 to Stevenage. I just really can't see Chesterfield providing an upset. But I'd love it if they would. I would really like that to happen. Sutton United versus AFC Telford United. Both of these teams are struggling at the wrong end of the table. Sutton United now looking at this point almost destined to be playing National League South football next season. Telford less so. Maybe Sutton could use this as a bit of a springboard for momentum. 2-1 to Sutton United. We will forever remember the time, I think, when they managed to defeat Coventry City. That was it in the 90s from the. I think there's actually a Wikipedia. 2-1 in 1989, 1988-99 FA Cup game. In the third round, there was 8,000 in attendance. It was one of the best games that there has ever been in the FA Cup. I mean, Sutton United have their fair share, actually, of FA Cup upsets, because they reached the fifth round of the FA Cup in 2016-17, beating Leeds United on the way before losing to Arsenal. So they were, they were a decent team. They've they reached the EFL Trophy final in 2021-22, so quite decently. They're certainly a side that you would be naive to bet against, especially with their history in both this competition and in just knockout football in general. 2-1 to Sutton United. Let's be real. A upset isn't likely, I wouldn't say, in this particular situation. Tranmere Rovers versus Stockport County. I think Stockport County might focus on the league. I think Tranmere Rovers aren't as bothered, and therefore I'm going to go with a huge 4-0 win for Tranmere Rovers. The Merseysiders claiming one of the huge scalps of a weekend. Wealdstone versus Southend United. I think Southend might be focusing on getting a playoff finish Wealdstone, I think, we're just going to be content in mid-table. And as a result, I think Wealdstone might edge this one out slightly. Neither of these two teams, they both would have wanted a better tie. Let's be real on this. 3-2 to Wealdstone. Weston-super-Mare versus Aldershot Town. We know Weston-super-Mare are doing really well in the National League South, and Aldershot not so much in the National League. It could be an upset. I just think it's going to be an exciting game either way. I think Aldershot do win this one 5-2, but it could be an absolutely ridiculous game. It's so hard to predict because these two teams are relatively even on paper. Wigan Athletic versus Hemel Hempstead Town. The Tudors will be hoping for a win in this one. It's a really big scalp if they do. Wigan Athletic won the FA Cup about 10 years ago, was it? About that. I'm not too sure who Lee Allinson is. He wasn't their manager when they were. Well, I don't know who he is, but he's doing a darn good job. He's doing a really good job at the moment. He's got them in the playoffs. They were in mid-table last season. They are doing fundamentally much better. I think we're going to see a 0-0 draw in this one, but I do think Wigan are going to win this one in extra time, maybe in penalties. Wycombe Wanderers versus Plymouth Argyle. Both of these two teams are struggling in League One at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be a pretty game of football at all. 1-0 to Plymouth Argyle. I think it'll be a fairly low-scoring affair. Brackley Town versus Notts County. Notts County are taking this game very seriously, according to the pre-match press conference, apparently. Now, they did win it way back when in the 1890s. And, they'll probably see this as an opportunity to go on a bit of a run in this competition. I think Brackley want to cause an upset. I'm going with a 0-0 draw, but I do think Notts County win it in extra time. Maybe penalties, maybe, not sure. Okay, we've got some National League North games. It gets to that point now where we are going to basically just be doing League Ones. There's a couple of FA Cup ones, but we've by and large done most of them. So we are now talking about the National League North. And the first one we're talking about is Alfreton Town versus Kidderminster Harriers. Kidderminster Harriers are in the playoffs in 7th at the moment. They're unbeaten in the last 3, won their last 2. Alfreton still struggling despite winning Jake Buxton. They've made a couple of signings in the last day or two. Harry Hawkins on loan, a Derby Academy player. Jake Buxton obviously know him from his time as being interim academy coach. Or not interim, I can't remember what his official title was. It was like intermediate, something between the academy and the first team. I can't remember what his official title was. Anyway, I do think Kidderminster win this one 2-0. I think it's just too obvious to go with that, but I think it's going to be the result. Hereford versus Curzon Ashton. Curzon Ashton are knocking on the door of the playoffs. They've won the last 2 games. They're at 1 point off the playoffs, and I'm going to be real. They look like a side which are going to be finishing in the playoffs this season, scoring 23 goals, which is 6 more than Kidderminster Harriers have. I think they're more likely to than Kidderminster at this current point in time. But, they do have a bit of a weakness at times, which has been shown. They're up against a Hereford side. I think Hereford could maybe cause a bit of an upset. We're going to 3-1 to Hereford while the cameras are all busy focusing on the FA Cup. It'd be the ideal time to strike and get a bit of a momentum going. Marine versus AFC Fylde. Marine have also won the last 2 games on the bounce. They're very mid-table. I think they're more likely, though, to go downwards than upwards, purely on the basis their defence is looking quite ropey. Luckily for them that they haven't been caught out too many times, but with a team like Fylde, they're surely going to put them to the sword. We go 2-1 to Fylde in this one, which will see them go top of the league because South Shields are still in the cup. Which will be a huge psychological boost for them, even though they will have played 2 games more than South Shields. Merthyr Town versus Darlington. Darlington mid-table. Results would suggest as much. 4 wins, 4 draws, 5 losses. 20 goals scored, 18 conceded. Yeah, such a mid-table team. Up against Merthyr Town, slightly better. Scoring 23, conceding 25. They concede way too many goals. They would be in a relegation zone in goals conceded. But for goals scored, they've managed to make sure that they are competitive and floating. And 4 points off the playoffs. I think we're going to have a 1-1 draw in this game. At Penny Darren Park. Oxford City versus Bedford Town. If there was ever an opportunity, Oxford City were going to get a win again, considering they're on one of the longest winless runs in the National League North at the moment. It would probably come against Bedford Town. Now, yes, Bedford Town are unbeaten in the last 4 with 3 wins in that spell, but they are 15th for a reason. They are a team which potentially could slip up against a Oxford City. Oxford City score a lot of goals. They've scored 20, which is a very decent amount. It's for conceding is the issue, and they're just sloppy goals all over the front. I'm going to go with a 1-0 vote to Oxford City, which might give them a huge deal of confidence boost. I think at the moment in time, I think Oxford City are most likely to pull themselves out of it on the basis of how many goals they've scored. If they can start outscoring the opposition, they'll start climbing out of their current predicament. Peterborough Sports versus Chorley. Peterborough Sports is arguably another one of them teams which you would expect to pull themselves out. Having conceded 25, though, it isn't a pretty reading at all for the Cambridgeshire side. They are up against a very difficult and formidable opponent in Chorley, who admittedly are on a 5-game winless run, both scored 28, conceded 22. They're quite a end-to-end team and probably more likely than not will reach the playoffs come the end of the season. They normally do. So we're going to see a 1-0 Chorley win in this one. On to the next one. Southport versus Kings Lynn Town. New manager Ian Culverhouse at Kings Lynn. Probably justified. They're on a pretty dire run of form at present. And maybe Ian Culverhouse can do a bit of a shake-up at the Linnets. They're up against Southport as well, which are a team who are rooted at the bottom of the league. To be fair, compared to the other relegated sides, they're not as bad, I don't think. They just can't win. Only 2 wins all season and 2 draws. They can't hang on to results. And I think we will therefore see Kings Lynn win this one. 2-0 to the Linnets. Worksop Town versus Scarborough Athletic. Worksop on a pretty poor run of form. Only 1 win in the last 6. And Scarborough, although they've lost the last 3 games on a bounce, they are still in the playoffs in 4th for a reason, and a very good reason at that. Scoring 23 is a bit of an underachievement for where they and conceding 20 are both quite poor metrics to be in the playoffs, but it's just their ability to win games. 8 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw here. Puts an end to the losing streak, I suppose, but I'd imagine Scarborough would be disappointed if they don't get all 3 points in this one. On to Bath City versus Horsham in the National League South. Bath City are maybe beginning to look over their shoulders, only 1 point off the relegation zone. I don't think they necessarily need to worry. It's still early doors, and it is, at the moment, I think they're less likely to be relegated than some of the other teams around them. Purely on the basis they've only conceded 17. Their defence is just a bit better, and that can sometimes help you get out of the mud. Horsham unbeaten the last 5, won the last 3 games. You would expect Horsham to win this one, but I'm going to go slightly rogue with a 2-1 Bath City win at Twerton Park. We love a good rogue shout on this channel, don't we? Chesham United versus Chippenham Town. Chesham a bit mid-table in 11th. Understandable reasons, really. Underscoring is one of them. But they're not horrendous. They're not brilliant. They're 2 points off the playoffs. A little bit of fairiness, and they may be able to start competing for that playoffs. And I do think up against Chippenham Town, which have only won 1 game this season, it all likely to point to a Chesham win. 2-0 to Chesham United. Dagenham and Redbridge versus Farnborough. Dagenham and Redbridge have managed to pull themselves out relegation zone. Not too surprising. I think it was almost inevitable that they were going to pull themselves out of that predicament. There's 2 points will separate these two teams. They've both conceded 23, but Farnborough have scored 18 and Dagenham and Redbridge have scored 15. So Farnborough, you would argue, is a slightly better team, and they do have a game in hand over Dagenham and Redbridge, so probably will at some point leapfrog them. We'll go with a 0-0 draw in this one. I can't quite decide which way I would sway for this game. Enfield Town versus Eastbourne Borough. A relegation 6-pointer already? Question mark. Enfield are just above the relegation zone on goal difference. Eastbourne are 4 points off safety. They're going to need to win this one. And they have had a bit of a shake about, I believe, of late, bringing in Tommy Woodrington. And you know what? I think this is a perfect chance for Tommy Woodrington to strike. Having been at Aldershot, a decent manager, as he's taken on 3 games already at Eastbourne, and he's had 1 win and 2 losses. So he's slightly made a turnaround in his first initial game anyway. I think 5-0 to Eastbourne Borough in this one. I think we will start to maybe see a bit of a lift up for the Sussex-based outfit. Maidstone United versus Tunbridge Angels in a Kent-based derby in this one, although because of the FA Cup, maybe slightly out of the headlines rather. Maidstone, 5 games without a loss now. 4 of them are wins, looking very tidy indeed. Admittedly, Tunbridge Angels have only lost once in the last 5 games, with 6 games rather, with 1 loss in the middle of that. I think could be quite an entertaining game considering it's a local derby. We'll go with a 1-1 draw, which I think is the most typical result for a derby of sorts, isn't it? Salisbury versus Dorking Wanderers. Dorking are a side which I can't quite place my finger on if they're going to make playoffs or not. Week by week, my mind fluctuates. They've scored 20, they've conceded 17. They win loads, then they lose some. They've won 6, drawn 4, lost 4. They could feasibly reach playoffs. We know that they have that capability within them. It wouldn't be too surprising if it did. Whereas at the same time, they're just not consistent enough to be able to do it. I think up against a Salisbury team, which I think could cause a bit of an upset. So Salisbury in the relegation zone, I think we're going to see an upset in this one, I think a 1-1 draw is what we're going to see. Torquay United versus Hornchurch. 2 very decent sides. Torquay in 5th, Hornchurch top of the league. Hornchurch currently invincible, but I think at Plainmoor, Torquay could put an end to this unbeaten run. And I think they will. I think it'll be a close game. I'm going 2-1 to Torquay United. Either any of the top 3 or top 4 even, I would be content with them getting promoted. Because it just freshens things up. It makes things slightly interesting. Worthing versus Hampton Richmond Borough. Hampton Richmond Borough have lost the last 4 games in a row. There does come a point in time, doesn't there, where you do start to have to question: is Hampton Richmond Borough really going to be able to able to stick with their manager this entire time? I think if they lose this game, Alan Julian, you have to go, mate. They didn't. It's sort of almost repetition of what they had last season, wasn't it? In 2024-25, the Alan Julian finished in 18th in his first season, and that is not where they will want to be finishing again. And so I think sometimes having a freshness to the squad, to a manager, isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think if he loses this one, he does have to go. He's not won in a very long time now. He's lost the last 4 games on the trot. It's looking more and more risky. Yes, and we know they have a quality. That's the thing. We've seen already that they have a quality to be at the top end of the table. So why are they suddenly not doing good enough? Well, that's manager. The book ultimately stops with the manager. Worthing, well, they're in the hunt for the playoffs. They've won the last 3 games in a row, 1 point off the playoffs. I think they're looking the most likely team outside the playoffs to then get into the playoffs. For me, scoring 22, conceding 16. I'm going with a 2-0 win for Worthing in this one. West Ham United versus Newcastle United. On to some more Premier League games. I'm getting a really dry throat now. And I don't even think we're halfway through. Which is not ideal. So, West Ham United are at home, but they're obviously struggling at the moment. Only 1 win all season. Nuno beginning to come under a bit of criticism at West Ham. I think he would be pretty stupid to not give him the time that's maybe needed. I'll give him a couple more games. If he loses the next 2 games, then yeah, by all means sack him. But I think Nuno is a decent manager. He can, if need be, make an impact. But yeah, I think Newcastle do win this one. 1-0 to Newcastle United, although they're looking a bit uncertain at this stage of the season, a bit mid-table. We know they possess some good qualities in that. So yeah, 1-0 to Newcastle. Manchester City up against Bournemouth. I think Man City lost their last game, but before that, we were on a really good run of form. Bournemouth, though, are on a really good run of form as well. It's such a difficult game to predict in this one. They're both very even, both very good. Bournemouth, hats off to you. You are doing a fantastic job. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to back Man City to win this one. 3-1 to the Northerners. On to South Shields versus Shrewsbury Town. I mean, as I already said, I'm not going to this one, but I think it would be an interesting one either way. They are a team of... I've been to South Shields a few times. They've done really well this season, but they did lose the last game, and it's a bit of a shame in a sense. I'm going 0-0 draw, but I do think Shrewsbury win on a penalty shootout. Eastleigh versus Walsall. I'm going to be doing a live watch along for this one. I'm actually going to get some fluids as well at that point. And I think in this one, Walsall are doing decent, Eastleigh are not, but you could see an upset. I'm going 0-0 draw, but I do think, again, Walsall will edge out in extra time. That professionalism just coming through. Port Vale and Malden Tiptree, I think a very similar story. We know Malden Tiptree do like an upset though, but I just don't see it in this one. 0-0 Port Vale to win in extra time. Gainsborough Trinity versus Accrington Stanley. Accrington Stanley need to desperately avoid a pitfall of an upset, because the issue is with Accrington Stanley is they're currently in a bit of a sticky situation in the League Two in terms of being in a relegation battle, and they will be desperately wanting something to start a run. And I think this is a perfect opportunity, and I think they may provide a bit of a whipping. 5-1 to Accrington Stanley. Sunderland versus Everton. Both of these two teams doing quietly quite well. Sunderland in 4th, which is absolutely staggering. Only lost twice all season, opening 9 games. Everton have begun to slump down a bit, but I think Everton could win this one. We'll go with a 3-0 win to the Evertonians. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I live in Newcastle, and if somebody starts watching this, I'll get beaten up because you can't support Mackems. But yeah, Tamworth versus Leyton Orient, the last FA Cup one, I believe. I think we could see at the Lamb Ground a defensively. We know that Tamworth a few seasons back were very defensively solid. I think we could see that again. A 0-0 draw, Leyton Orient to only win on penalties. Champions League or Slavia Prague versus Arsenal. I mean, I don't follow the Champions League that closely. I tend to find it is just a bit boring for me, hence why I didn't cover it before. But, you know, Arsenal have won the last 3 games in a row in that competition. I mean, it's got to count to something, doesn't it? And they're up against a Prague team as well, who, let's be honest, aren't the most likely to progress. And they are currently in that position, the bit which they're in the non-progression bit. I think Arsenal win this one fairly comfortably. 4-0. Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Although Liverpool have done bad in the league, maybe they'll up their game in this one. Because they need to if they're going to progress to the next round, because already they're in the playoffs bit, and it's a difficult game against Real Madrid, but I'm going to go at Anfield 2-0 to Liverpool. Tottenham Hotspur versus Copenhagen. Spurs, glorious Spurs. They've drawn 2, and they are up against a Copenhagen side who have only drawn once and lost 2 of the games. It would be such a Spursy thing to draw this, and I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. It's just very typical, isn't it? Birmingham City versus Millwall. We spoke a lot about how good Millwall were already this video and how inconsistent Birmingham City are. And I think we will see in this one a 1-1 draw. Millwall's unbeaten run to continue, but they are going to slow down and slightly peter out a bit, I think. Bristol City versus Blackburn Rovers. Although I will have had Blackburn at this point to have won 2 games back-to-back, I can't go beyond them. I can't see them beating Bristol City. They're doing so well right now, Bristol City. So yeah, 2-1 to Bristol City. The Southwestern Robins will continue to chirp and sing their beautiful songs as they continue to go up the league. Charlton Athletic versus West Bromwich Albion. Yeah, both of these two teams, I think, are roughly equal in quality. And I think we're going to see a draw in this one. 2-2 draw at the Valley. Derby County versus Hull City. although I have us to predict us to lose against Sheffield United, I think we could do something here. We tend to do all right against Hull. We don't tend to lose heavily if we lose at all, and I just think we're going to get something from it. We'll go with a 1-1 draw. We've had a lot of draws this season. I can just see this being another one of them. Well, asking the Derby fans, my fellow fans amongst there, how would you feel out of 4 games to have had 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss? Would you be content with that over the last couple of weeks? I don't know. They're a bit impatient, Derby fans. Ipswich Town versus Watford. I think this one could also be quite an even game. Both of these 2 teams very much underachievers so far this season. And for that, I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. Leicester City are at home to Middlesbrough. And although I have Middlesbrough to have had a couple of slip-ups, I think they're going to go right back to it and back to winning ways in this one. 2-1 to Middlesbrough as they continue their quest to finally gain back into the Premier League. After it will be almost at that point. It might be exactly 10 years. That's flipping it. That's gone by quick, hasn't it? Oxford United versus Stoke City. This is an interesting one. Gary Rowett's men may be able to. Again, another one of the former Gary Rowett teams is Stoke City. We used to have the old snakes out when we used to play Stoke because Stoke took Gary Rowett from Derby County way back when. That is also getting a long time ago now. Oxford United, I think, will win this one at the Kassam. 1-0 to the U's. Coventry City versus Sheffield United. I don't think Sheffield United. I think Sheffield United will start suddenly building some strength to strength motions going on here, and I think as a result could provide a bit of a sore throat for Coventry. I don't think Coventry's unbeaten run will end here, but I think it'll be a 2-2 draw. Maybe we'll be starting to see a little bit of weakness and creaking in this Coventry side. Rotherham United versus Burton Albion. Both of these 2 teams hover delicately above the relegation zone at the moment, which is not really a position you want to be in per se. Rotherham are much more consistent. They've had peaks and troughs at Rotherham. Burton, they're so irregular with their results, it's hard to predict. But we're going to go with a 2-2 draw in this one. It's also the game in hand, so it'd be useful for Burton to gain something from this one, just to create that bit of gap and a bit of safety net, so to speak. Boreham Wood versus Aldershot Town in the National League. Even though Boreham Wood have done a decent job, I think all their concentration and effort this week will have gone into the FA Cup. And as a result, I think Aldershot might nick something here. 2-1 to Aldershot Town. I can't also see Boreham Wood managing to stay in this playoff hunt all season. Carlisle United versus FC Halifax Town. Both of these 2 teams are doing a solid enough job in the National League. Halifax, their winning run did come to an end a couple of games ago. So in the last 2 games they've only picked up a point, but before that we're doing a very good job. Carlisle United 4 games unbeaten as well. We'll go with a 0-0 draw in this one. Hartlepool United versus Morecambe. Now, Morecambe, I think, slightly starting to get their act together a bit. It would be absolutely mad if Morecambe managed to stay up at this point. They have conceded already 41 goals this season. That's about 2.5 goals a game. It's quite a ridiculous stat. They've scored 21, though they're still scoring a fair few. They just need to stop with their defensive stupidities. But we know that Hartlepool are a side that don't concede many, 13 goals conceded, but don't score many at 18. I think we could see a draw in this one. A 2-2 draw. It's never going to be 0-0 with Morecambe, is it, at this point? Rochdale versus Scunthorpe United. Yeah, first versus second. 1 point separating these two teams. Okay, yes, Rochdale have got 2 games in hand above all the 4 teams behind him at the moment. I don't know if I think that might be because of their rubbish pitch, but don't quote me on that. Yeah, I think this could be another even game. We'll go with a 0-0 draw in this one instead. Yeovil Town versus Whaleston. 2 quite mid-table teams, 11th versus 14th. Could really go either way, couldn't it? But I'm going to go a 2-1 Whaleston. They score a fair few. They both conceded 24, but Whaleston have scored 6 more than Yeovil. For that reason, I think Whaleston edge it. Some EFL Trophy games. Got Grimsby Town versus Everton's under 21s. As I've already said, Grimsby are loving a cup competition so far this season, and for that reason, I think I'm just going to check because I think we're at this point at the climate, some final games here. Yeah, so essentially it's a stupid game. Sorry, this is a stupid thing about EFL Trophy. Both of these two teams have lost their 2 games. No one can get out of this group in this one. It is a futile, stupid game. And I'm going to go 2-1 to Grimsby. It really, really doesn't matter, though. I cannot actually comprehend why on earth this is the case. We get so much complaints, don't we, about sort of tired legs or whatever. This is the stupidity that the Premier League is enforcing, though, further down the pyramid. So much for caring about the players' welfare or whatever. They couldn't give a damn, could they? They just want to see the lower teams suffer for the upper teams to succeed. Oh well. Notts County are hosting Man United's under 21s. Notts County both of these two teams can technically still go up. Man United basically need to win this one if they are to do that. Their goal difference is also incredibly unhealthy. And I just think this will be a fairly even game. I think Notts County I think it'll be a draw, but I think Notts County gain the extra point on penalties, which would see them in that position in second. So it will go down to the final games, because it might not do. I don't know. I can't predict the future, because that will be their one. So then that would mean Lincoln will need to beat Barnsley in order for Notts County to then get promoted at that point. Huddersfield Town versus Mansfield Town. Another one of these northern ones. Yeah, I think Mansfield need to win this one in order to guarantee themselves to get in the... So Mansfield can still technically do it, but they need to win this one against Huddersfield in order to qualify for the next round. I don't see that likely to happen. I think Huddersfield will win this one 2-1, which will make Harrogate versus Newcastle a useless game other than to see if Harrogate will be seeded at home or not, essentially. That's the only thing that I think would make a blind bit of difference in that game. AFC Telford United versus Merthyr Town. Well, we've spoken a bit about both of these two teams already, and how they are roughly as sort of equal as you're going to be at the moment. Telford on a 3 games unbeaten run. Merthyr slightly better in terms of overall points, 3 points more. Telford tend to keep the scoreline a bit lower. We'll go with a 1-1 draw in this one. Buxton versus Southport. Buxton, by the way, one of the best teams in the National League North, joint with Radcliffe, best runs of form right now on 6-game unbeaten run. Absolutely immense from Buxton, and I'm not going to stop them, especially against bottom place side Southport. 2-1 to Buxton. I'd love the Derbyshire team to get promoted. I absolutely would. It would be absolute scenes in Derbyshire if they managed to do that. I might even have to bring my Derbyshire flag onto a stream if that's the case. Chester versus Marine. Well, we got Marine in 12th, very mid-table. Chester are doing quite poorly. They've had a lot of draws this season. I think I've laboured the point, it feels, almost in every single video at this point. I think Chester do win this one, though. 2-1 to Chester. Maybe put some of that drawing habits behind them firmly in the past at this point. Chorley versus Alfreton Town. Alfreton are in the position that they, I think, quite like to get relegated. I'm going to be honest. They've conceded the most. They've scored the least in the league. It's not looking great. I'm up against a Chorley side who'll be wanting to get playoffs. 2-0 to Chorley. It's not looking good, Alfreton. It really isn't. Curzon Ashton versus Spennymoor Town. Although Curzon Ashton, in the last couple of games, have maybe been a bit better than Spennymoor. It's quite hard to say which way this is going to go. We're going to go 3-0 to Spennymoor Town, though. I think, could this be the season that we actually see Spennymoor get to the playoffs? I'm not going to count my chickens because that is one of the foolish things to do in football, especially seeing Spennymoor have a natural tendency to fall off the edge of a cliff come at the end of a season or mid-season point. In fact, we're coming close to the point where they do just suddenly start collapsing. But, you know, that they are in that position at the moment, and I can see them maybe staying in the playoffs for a bit further still. Darlington versus Worksop Town. Darlington in 13th, Worksop in 16th. Two very even-based sides, I think. A 0-0 draw in this one. 1 point separating these two teams. It's hard to call. Kidminster Harriers versus Bedford Town. Bedford in 15th, unbeaten in 4 games, but Kidminster Harriers are in 7th in playoffs. You would naturally assume maybe that Kidminster will win this one, and I think I am going to go with that. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Kidderminster Harriers. King's Town versus Leamington. Both of these two teams at the moment are 1 point between each other, 19th and 20th respectively. Both cautiously looking over their shoulder. Both on a pretty bad run of form. And I think both will come away with nothing. A 0-0 draw in this one, which will be a point apiece, but it will look incredibly dull and incredibly boring. Both teams trying to counter the other team's lackluster performances. Macclesfield versus Peterborough Sports. Maybe Peterborough Sports can come in and provide a bit of an upset to Macclesfield. A 0-0 draw, another 0-0 draw, it feels like, in this one. Oxford City versus Hereford. Two of the more southern-based teams in the National League North. I think that is fair to say. Hereford having a bit of a poor season for their recollections. But up against Oxford, I think they should be able to win this one. 2-0. No, we'll go 2-1 to the Bulls. AFC Toten versus Maidenhead United in the National League South. Both of these two teams have an eye on the playoffs. Toten doing much better than Maidenhead, considering one got promoted last season and one got relegated. A 0-0 draw I'm going to go with in this one. Another 0-0 draw. we do love them, it seems, at this level. I don't know how often these actually turn out to be 0-0 draws when I say it, but it tends to be something I often do. Shipton Town versus Salisbury in a relegation 6-pointer. Very fascinating. 5 points between these two sides. I'm going to back Chippenham to... Actually, no, that'd be naive. Salisbury to win this one 1-0. Both of these two teams are near each other. I think it's a Wiltshire derby. Are they both in Wiltshire? I can't remember if Salisbury's in Wiltshire. I think it is. So it is a Wiltshire derby as well. That's going to be a huge game, that one. Dorking Wanderers versus Enfield Town. Enfield hovering just in the relegation zone on goal difference, whereas Dorking are hovering just outside the playoffs on goal difference. But I think it could be a fairly even game. I can't tell you why, but I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Sometimes there is just no rationale to these predictions at all. Eastbourne Borough versus Dagenham and Redbridge. With Eastbourne's new manager, Tommy Woodrington, maybe be able to get something out of this one. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. Two of these two teams rather are not 100% the greatest and definitely underachieving for their own fans' sense of where they should be at this point in time. Ebbsfleet United versus Maidstone United. Very mid-table from Ebbsfleet at present. Maidstone unbeaten in 5 with 4 wins in that spell. They're looking destined now, I think, for the playoffs. It is, of course, too early to say, but I think Maidstone win this one 3-2 to Maidstone United as they continue to go from strength to strength. Hemel Hempstead Town versus Weston-super-Mare, 2nd versus 4th. 4 points separating these two teams. They've both done surprisingly well this season, haven't they? And I think I'm going to edge out Weston-super-Mare. I think they're relatively even between sides, but Hemel Hempstead don't score a lot. They've both conceded 9, which is incredibly good defensive work. But Hemel Hempstead have only scored 15, whereas Weston-super-Mare scored 23. So we're going to go with a low-scoring 1-0 win for Weston-super-Mare. Hornchurch versus Chesham United. I think Hornchurch get back to winning ways in this one. They're currently unbeaten all season at the moment. And I think against Chesham, they could win this one. We're going to go with a 2-1 win for Hornchurch as they continue on their fine form this season. Who actually saw Hornchurch doing this well? Do let me know. Horsham versus Dover Athletic. It's a hard one. I don't think Horsham will fully be able to maintain a playoff charge this season. Dover gonna need to get a win because they've not had a win in a while now. Feels like a long time, doesn't it, Dover fans? So I'm going to go with a 3-1 win to Dover Athletic. There's no reason behind that at all. But they are much more erratic, scoring 23, conceding 25. It will be a proper end-to-end game. You can categorically say that. Slough Town versus Bath City. I think Slough might... I mean, this is also... They're 1 point between the two of them. Slough concede a fair few, but they score more than Bath. 3-0 to Slough Town. I mean, if they can deal with the goals conceded aspect, there is no reason why they can't get out of that mess. but their defence is just in shambles. It's the worst in the league. So it is one of them ones that you would expect, if they can suddenly start getting a bit of defensive solidity into that side, they could probably start competing a bit more. Tonbridge Angels versus Chelmsford City. 16th versus 14th, 3 points difference. Tonbridge Angels are on a slightly better run of form, and for that reason, and at home, I'm going to back them to win this one by 2-1. Qarabağ versus Chelsea in the Champions League. I mean, let's be honest. There is not going to be a hope in hell that Qarabağ is going to get something from this game. And as a result, I am going to have to say a 4-0 win for Chelsea, which will probably most likely put them in the automatic bit of the promotion zone, whatever you call it, in this new complicated format that they have. It must be said that Qarabağ are doing decently, but up against the Chelsea side, may be a stretch too far. Manchester City versus Borussia Dortmund. Both of these two teams unbeaten in the tournament so far. Dortmund have been really impressive from the goal, scoring 12, conceding 7. Manchester City averaging 2 goals a game in scoring terms. I think this could be quite an exciting game to watch, actually. I think Manchester City just edge it 2-1 to Man City. Newcastle United versus Athletic Bilbao. Newcastle just hanging on in that automatic zone there. And I think they've had 2 wins on a bounce in this tournament. I think it could well be another one up against Athletic Club, who've only picked up 1 win so far in this tournament. It's also at St James's Park. 3-2 to Newcastle United. Preston North End versus Swansea City in the Championship. I think this could be a very even game. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. I can't pick a winner out of this one at all. Queen's Park Rangers versus Southampton. Maybe we start seeing Southampton gather their things together and actually sort themselves out. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Southampton here. But I could easily see that going the other way. Sheffield Wednesday versus Norwich City. If there's one team that Sheffield Wednesday probably wanted to play, it would be Norwich City, wouldn't it? Because Norwich City are currently a bit bad. Just a bit. And I think Sheffield Wednesday at home could win this one. 2-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. Portsmouth versus Wrexham. I don't understand the hype behind Wrexham at all. They have been pretty poor this season. They've been about as good as Derby have. And coming from a Derby fan, we've been pretty poor this season. I would rather we'd been higher. So at Fratton Park as well, 1 point separating these two teams. We know Fratton Park's a bit of a fortress. We know Portsmouth love a good home win. 2-0 to Pompey. Altrincham versus Boston United. Boston are an odd team. They've always have been, in a sense, but mid-table at the moment. So doing much better than they did last season, that must be said. It will be interesting to see how Altrincham change under new regime. Maybe they'll have appointed a manager by then. Who knows? I'm going to see this game ending in a 2-2 draw. Braintree Town versus Brackley Town. Brackley starting to fall off a bit. They've not won in the last 5. Maybe we'll in this one with Braintree in the position, but they've not won in a long time either. But maybe buoyed on by a defeat to their near rivals in the FA Cup, maybe they might do. I'm going to go with another 3-2 win for Braintree Town, which will push them outside of a relegation zone. Solihull Moors versus Truro City. Truro finally looking a bit better, unbeaten in the last 3. Things slightly starting to come into place in there. We're up against a Solihull team, which are roughly around about the same area. There's about 5 points difference. 0-0 draw in this one. Why ever not? We love that for Truro City. We seem to predict it every week. But oh well, someday it'll come true, won't it? Sutton United versus Eastleigh. We know Sutton have only won once in this, but maybe the league, but maybe in the FA Cup, having a win will be enough to spur them on. And up against a mid-table Eastleigh side who are forever in 12th, we could see Sutton win this one. 1-0 to Sutton United. You never know. You really don't. Woking versus Southend United. Fair few draws of late. Fair few draws. Well, Woking's just mid-table. Yeah, it's 16th. You have four wins, 5 draws, 7 losses, 20 goals scored, 20 goals conceded. The bang sort of how you expect a 16th place team to be honest. Maybe they'll go up a few spaces. I don't know. If they continue their good form, they obviously will do. They're unbeaten 4. Southend are also unbeaten 4, but they've had 3 straight wins in this one. We'll go with a 0-0 draw. Why not? York City versus Gateshead. We'll go with a 1-0 win to York here. They're unbeaten 4, and I think they are more likely to. Well, they'll probably. I'm realistically going to say it now. We're early doors in the season, and they're still definitely likely to get, in that sort of top 2, even top 2, top 3. I think you can't ever sleep on York. So yeah, that's why I'm going to go with a 1-0 win in this one. Gateshead, I think, could be in danger of being dragged into a relegation scrap. I've been saying that for the last few weeks. Hasn't yet materialised, but could well do so. In the EFL Trophy, we've got Cambridge United versus Brighton Hove Albion's under 21s. Is there much point? Is this another one of them useless games? Probably. More than certainly, yes. Actually, not quite. Cambridge essentially need to win this game either on a penalty shootout or outright to get through to the next round. Barnet will just be hoping that Brighton can do themselves a favour and win this one. I'm going to see Cambridge win this one, though. 2-1 to Cambridge United to qualify for the next round. AFC Fylde versus South Shields. This is a momentous one, isn't it? That the second place team versus the first place team. They may well have swapped at that point, but they'll either be in one of these 2 top positions in the table. Too close to call for me. 0-0 draw. Bit of a cop-out. So be it. Farnborough versus Torquay United. We'll go with an unlikely 1-0 Farnborough win in this one. I just think Torquay could. They've shown themselves to be a bit fragile at times this season. And I think that continues. Sturm Graz versus Nottingham Forest. I think Forest's poor run in Europe continues. A 1-1 draw in here. Aston Villa versus Maccabi Tel Aviv. This had full of controversy. Obviously, with Maccabi Tel Aviv being in Israel, that has a bit of controversy towards it. I'm not going to comment too much on the political situation, but there were calls for Starmer to step in and block any home fans. They are a bit riotous, a bit rebellious. A 0-0 draw, it would be a poor reflection on English football. I think it'll be a poor performance on the pitch, to be honest. Proper kicking lumps out of each other and no real footballing quality. Crystal Palace versus AZ Alkmaar. I can never quite anticipate which ways this is going to go, these Conference League games. And typically of me, going to go hanging on a fence with a 0-0 draw in this one. Reading versus Stevenage. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how things change under Liam Richardson. I think this could be a 1-1 draw. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm going to go and have some tea and something to drink. But if you enjoyed, please do subscribe, and I'll try and release some new stuff just beyond predictions in the upcoming weeks. But I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.